They ignored my biggest achievement and turned my celebration into my sister's engagement party. Years later, they came back begging me to save them, but I wasn't their rescue plan anymore. I used to believe with every shred of hope in my bones that if I just worked hard enough, stayed kind enough, and achieved more than enough, one day my parents would finally look at me and see me. Not the other daughter, not Emily's older sister, but me on my own terms. But in our household, love wasn't this gentle, ever-present thing. It wasn't unconditional like the stories said it should be. In our family, love came with a ledger. It was a transaction. And from the very beginning, I had been operating at a deficit, emotionally bankrupt, trying to pay with a currency I never had enough of. Emily, now 32, had always been the golden child. From the moment we were kids, she shined like a diamond under a spotlight while I faded into the background like an extra with no lines. She had these big, blue eyes that twinkled with mischief and charm, a smile that could win crowds, and a way with people that felt like magic. I was quiet, introverted, always with my nose in a book, building tiny machines out of Legos, writing lines of code on old laptops while other kids were doing makeovers or playing house. While Emily was getting flowers for no reason, I was being asked why I was so cold. While she performed in dance recitals and wore cheerleading outfits, I was left alone at science fairs my parents didn't think were worth attending. And still, I kept reaching, kept hoping that maybe, just maybe, if I got enough A's, if I got the right degree, if I landed the impressive job, they'd finally turn toward me, eyes full of pride, and say the words I had been starving to hear. "We're proud of you." That moment never came, not even when I thought it would. At 28, I accomplished what most people only dream of. I became the youngest vice president at a prestigious tech company. I had pushed myself through grueling hours, sleepless nights, endless waves of doubt. I had given up birthdays, holidays, even weekends to earn that title. So when I got the call confirming my promotion, I cried not just because of joy, but from the sheer relief that maybe, finally, I had done enough. I wanted to share that moment with my family, so I planned a celebration dinner. I picked a gorgeous restaurant, reserved a long table with candlelight and wine, covered the bill myself, and told everyone I had a big announcement. It was supposed to be my night. For once, I put on a red dress that had been hanging in my closet for months. Something bold. Something I never felt brave enough to wear until then. I sat at the head of the table, my heart fluttering, watching as everyone arrived. My parents greeted me with casual hugs. Emily showed up with her boyfriend, Mark. The table was buzzing with laughter and chatter, glasses clinking, forks clinking against plates, and just as I lifted my glass, about to speak, my mother tapped her spoon against her wineglass. "I know our daughter has something to say," she said with a smile. "But first, we have a little surprise." My stomach sank so fast I could feel it in my shoes. Emily rose from her seat with a giggle, extended her hand, and flashed a diamond ring that caught the candlelight like a knife. "I'm engaged," she announced, beaming. The table erupted. Cheers, applause, claps on Mark's back. My mom pulled out a cake, a custom cake. "Congratulations, Emily and Mark," it read, in golden icing. She giggled and gloated like this had been the whole purpose of the evening. No one even asked what my announcement was. No one said a word about my promotion. I sat there, smiling like a mannequin, my red dress suddenly feeling like a costume I had no right to wear. I waited until right before dessert, then slipped out into the cold air, my eyes brimming with silent, burning tears. No one followed me. No one even noticed I had gone. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Wasn't it such a lovely evening? Emily is so lucky. Don't forget to send her the photos you took." That was it. No mention of me. No reference to why we were supposed to be there in the first place. "Nothing," I replied. "That was supposed to be my night. You knew I had an announcement." Her response was immediate and casual, like she'd been waiting to be dismissive. "Sweetheart, don't be like that. You'll have plenty of job things. An engagement is special. Don't make this about you." That message didn't just hurt. It shattered something in me. A fracture that went so deep I didn't even know it existed until that very moment. I had swallowed so many slights over the years, forgotten birthdays, one-sided holidays, favors that were freely given to Emily but denied to me. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could earn their love. But that text was the moment I realized that even if I changed the world, they would still look right through me. So I stopped trying. I didn't send some angry paragraph. I didn't make a scene. I just vanished. I blocked their numbers. I moved apartments. I enrolled in therapy, real therapy, the kind where you strip away the facade and look at the wounds you've been pretending didn't hurt. I started living just for me. It wasn't easy. Holidays were lonely. Birthdays came and went without calls. But there was peace in the silence. Freedom in the distance. I focused on my work, but not as a distraction, as a calling. I wanted to build something bigger than myself. 3 years later, I left the corporate world and co-founded a startup with 2 friends. We created a tool that used AI to make data more accessible for nonprofits. It took off faster than any of us expected. Investors came. Awards came. Last year, we went public. At 33, I was named CEO of a company valued at over $700 million. My face was on tech magazine covers. I spoke at conferences. I got messages from women all over the world telling me I had inspired them. And my family knew nothing. They weren't in that chapter of my life, or the one before, or the one after, until last month. It was a regular Tuesday when my assistant buzzed my office and said, "There's someone here claiming to be your sister. She doesn't have an appointment." I froze. My first instinct was to say no, to have security escort her out and never look back. But curiosity, or maybe some lingering fragment of that little girl who once just wanted to be seen, made me say yes. When Emily walked in, I barely recognized her. The light that used to dance in her eyes had died out. Her posture was slumped, her clothes worn in a way that suggested life had not been kind lately. We sat down and she immediately started to cry. She told me everything. The marriage had fallen apart. Mark had been cheating almost the entire time, and when he left, he took more than just his clothes. He drained their joint accounts, left her with piles of debt, and disappeared. She said my parents tried to help, even took out a second mortgage to keep her afloat. But then Dad lost his job and their savings evaporated. The house was on the verge of being taken. And then, she smiled this weak, almost pitiful smile and said, "We heard what you've been doing. Mom and Dad are so proud. They were just too nervous to reach out." She said she told them, "She's still you. She's not cold." Then came the ask. Not just emotional support. Financial. Tangible. Life-saving. Help. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I just looked her in the eye and asked a single question. "Do you remember that night?" She looked confused. "What night?" I kept my gaze steady. "The night I got promoted. The dinner you turned into your engagement party." Her expression twisted. Embarrassment? Guilt? Denial? Couldn't tell. She shifted in her chair and said, "Oh, come on. That was years ago." I nodded. Exactly. And in all that time, not one call. Not one message. Not one moment where anyone thought to ask how I was doing. She tried to fill the silence with excuses. That they thought I needed space. That they didn't want to push me. That they assumed I was fine. But we both knew those words were hollow. They didn't stay away because they cared. They stayed away because I wasn't useful until now. Until I had something they wanted. I stood up slowly, not with anger, but with finality. I told her that I was deeply sorry for what had happened to her. That no one deserved to be abandoned, to be used, or left broken by someone they loved. But I also told her that I was not their lifeboat. I had already spent too many years drowning in silence, in neglect, in the ache of being invisible, and I would not sink again just to keep them afloat. She cried again, pleaded that I was being cruel. But I wasn't. I was just done. I walked her out of the office without another word, and for a moment, it felt like I had finally closed a door that had been left open for far too long. But life, as it always does, had more to say. 2 weeks after that conversation, Emily returned. She didn't barge in. She didn't demand anything. She simply sat outside my office building, on a cold bench, for nearly an hour. When security called me again, I almost told them to make her leave. But when I left that evening, I found her still sitting there, smaller somehow. Not in size, but in presence. Like life had slowly worn her down. She handed me a letter. It was handwritten, folded neatly, with my name on the front. I took it without a word. That night, I read it alone in my apartment, unsure of what I expected. The letter was an apology, a real one, not the kind laced with justifications or softened with excuses. She apologized for that dinner, for the years of silence, for always letting me stand in the shadows while she took the spotlight. She told me that when her marriage fell apart, she finally understood what it felt like to be invisible, to pour your whole self into something or someone and get nothing in return. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for another chance. She just said she was sorry, that she hoped maybe someday we could talk again. I didn't respond right away. I still haven't decided if I will. But for the first time I considered it, not for her, but for me. Because forgiveness isn't about erasing the pain. It's not about letting people back into your life without boundaries. Forgiveness is about letting yourself breathe again, letting go of what's heavy, freeing yourself from the weight you should have never had to carry. But forgiveness doesn't mean access. And that's a lesson I had to learn slowly, painfully, but permanently. My father reached out too. He sent a long email, the kind that dances around accountability with vague sentences and half apologies. "We didn't know how to handle things back then," he wrote. "We were doing our best." But there was no mention of the cake, of the texts, of the years they let me drift away without a second thought. My mother, the one who had been the architect of so many of those wounds, surprisingly stayed silent. I won't lie, a part of me wanted to write back, not to reconnect, but to detail every single cut they'd inflicted over the years. Every birthday forgotten, every science fair missed, every moment I begged for their love and got nothing but indifference. But I didn't reply. I deleted it, because closure isn't something they're entitled to. Not just because they're finally ready now. I've been pouring myself into therapy, real work, not just processing the past, but learning how to protect my peace in the future. Because success doesn't mean anything if you're still haunted by ghosts from childhood. If you're still carrying wounds that whisper you're not enough. I've started mentoring a young woman in my industry. She's sharp, ambitious, and she reminds me of a younger version of myself. The version that still thought love could be earned with perfect grades and polite smiles. I told her something my therapist once told me that changed everything. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. That has become my compass. To anyone out there who has been treated like a backup character in their own family, who has only been noticed when they became useful, I see you. You are not broken. You are not forgettable. And you absolutely do not have to bleed just because they call it love. Sometimes walking away is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. And if that makes you look heartless in their eyes, let them think it. Because you know the truth. Cutting ties isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's survival. And that's worth celebrating. Like what you heard. Hit that like button, subscribe for more stories like this, and remember, your worth was never measured by how much you were willing to shrink for others.